Extract of the video. Poverty is one of bigger issues from the time immemorial until now. The problem is common all over the world, but in Malaysia it is very critical. This video will discuss poverty in Malaysia as a whole, which will be supported by related data and statistics.
Firstly, what is poverty? Poverty is when an individual or group lacks the means of subsistence. They are said to be in a state or situation of poverty. When a person is in poverty, their level of employment-based income is too low to cover even their most basic necessities. Families and individuals living in poverty may lack access to adequate housing, clean water, wholesome food, and medical care. Each country may have its own standards for establishing the poverty line and calculating the proportion of its population that lives in poverty. Malaysia government has expanded the household classification categories in 2020 by introducing 10 new subcategories. This information is done to ensure better target planning, monitoring, and program implementation. It also tries to narrow the economic disparity between households. An instance of poverty is defined as the percentage of impoverished dwellings in total Malaysian household. Now we are going to what is B40, M40 and T20. B40 refers to the 40% of Malaysians who are in the lowest position in terms of household income. Households that belong to the B40 group are those with a monthly income of less than 4,850. The B40 household group also includes households poor and hardly poor. B40 is the target group for most of the government assistance programs such as Bantuan Sara Hidup Rakyat, Peka B40 Health Scheme, and My Salam Takaful Scheme, and also electricity bill subsidy for poor and extreme poor only. Next, M40 is a group with middle incomes. The term M40 refers to the 40% of Malaysians whose household income falls between the middle and lower range middle income. The M40 groups consist of households with monthly incomes ranging from RM4,850 to RM10,959. Lastly, T20. T20 is the top 20% of Malaysian families in terms of household income are referred to as T20, high hearse income. T20 households are those having a monthly income at least RM10,960.
And I will present about literature review. The article that we have found is from the Malaysian Reserve, which the title is The Poverty Scale in Malaysia Will Worsen Under Current Policies, that was released in June 2020 by Shahmi Fayyad Jaafar. The issues raised in this article include the policy framework and the poverty rate, both of which are affecting the country's development. Based on the title of the article, it already highlighted one of the primary issues, which is the poverty rate is rising since existing policies are ineffective in reducing poverty. Thus, researchers have been researching the trends of this country's poverty rate, which has been growing, particularly in the post-COVID-19 era. As a result of the imbalance in the income sector, the gap between rich and poor has widened. Next, for the first issue is policy framework. This is due to the achievement of the vision of 2020 by the previous Prime Minister that wants to balance between moral and ethics. In order to achieve all the vision, there must be challenges that make it nearly impossible to do so, such as to establish a united nation and to develop a mature democratic society. Thus, because of the internal problems in the government such as corruption, the community became the victims of it because the authority misused the power for their benefits. Hence, it will make the development of the country slower. It also has an influence of diminishing productivity, which causes discouragement in the job market and increases unemployment. Then, for the second issue, which is poverty rate. Zohair Rosli, the researcher, believes that the new method needs to be used in order to measure the poverty rate in this new era of globalization that will be included in the implementation of the Shared Prosperity Vision 2030. This will be included in the implementation of the Shared Prosperity Vision 2030. As part of this strategy, a greater priority will be placed in the effort to eradicate to poverty by means of the many policies and programs that the government is obligated to implement. On the income and wages of individual households, this is due to the fact that management will need to increase wages and income in view of the fact that the cost of living is continuing to rise. Because of this, the community will also be able to keep up with the current economic climate and move closer to achieving its ultimate goal of becoming a developed nation.
Next, we will get into discussion based on macroeconomic theory. Regarding the topic of poverty, Zohair Rosli, senior researcher at DM Analytics, noted that despite the expansion of the economy, the income gap and lopsided distribution of income continue to worsen, with Bumiputra bearing the burden of this imbalance. In the analysis of the COVID-19 pandemic, Zohair noted that while the illness increased the number of homes, irrespective of ethnicity, that fell into poverty, it also made socioeconomic inequalities within each group worse. For instance, he pointed out that Bumiputras in rural areas had the greatest rates of poverty, followed by Indian groups, while Chinese people had relatively lower rates of poverty. Concerning how the pandemic will affect a country's ability to grow, Zohair thinks that the fall in productivity could significantly disrupt the labour market and raise unemployment. He also discussed wages, emphasizing the need for them to rise faster than inflation in order to keep up with rising living expenses. Not only that, but earnings also need to rise more quickly than the CPI index. Zohair suggested putting policies into place that will enhance accessibility to inexpensive healthcare and education, as well as give financial assistance to individuals who are unable to work in order to live a decent life. Unless immediate action is done to lower this issue through prudent fiscal management, the nation's debt load will only expand. Our nation is wasting its money by acquiring greater debt. Income is dropping. Nevertheless, we keep taking on more debt and end up using a large portion of our income to pay off our loans. The data above proves the validity of the statements made by Zohair. From the above data, it is clear that the Bumiputra are still far behind compared to the Chinese and Indians. For all ethnic groups, a decline in the proportion of households earning less than 6,000 was seen. For the income class of 20,000 ringgit and above, there was a growth for all three ethnic groups. 8.7% of Chinese households reported having an income of more above 20,000 ringgit, followed by 5.5% of Indian households and 3.3% of Bumiputra households. According to the statistic presented above, a greater proportion of households in states with a predominantly Bumiputra population fall into the B40 income bracket. More than 50% of households in states like Kelantan, Perak, Pahang, Perlis, Kedah, Terengganu, Sabah and Sarawak fall under the B40 group. This can be linked to the state's slower rates of development and investment over time.
So now we will have a newspaper discussion about our issue, which is poverty in B40, M40 and T20. We will discuss this issue using the Star and the Age Market newspaper. According to news sources, which is the Star newspaper released on October 3, 2022, there are currently 2.91 million B40 households which are classified as earning less than 4,850 ringgit Malaysia per month. Furthermore, 2.91 million households in the M40 category had a monthly income of between 4,850 ringgit Malaysia and 10,959 ringgit Malaysia. Lastly, 1.49 million T20 group households have monthly of income more than 10,960 ringgit Malaysia. There was a surge in the truly destitute during the COVID-19 pandemic. Hardcore poverty increased from 5.6% in 2020 to 8.4% in 2021. Since April 2021, when the economy began to open up, the number have declined, with the jobless rate gradually falling from 5.2% to 3.7%. Regarding the inflation rate, it was 4.7% in August, then 4.4% in July. Now we will look at the second newspaper, which is the Age Market newspaper. According to the United Nations, the number of people living in extreme poverty decreased from 36% in 1990 to 10% in 2015. The effect of COVID-19 are reversing decades of advancement. The income share for the B40 and M40 decreased to 15.9% and 36.9% respectively from 2019 to 2020, according to the Department of Statistics Malaysia (DOSM). About 20% of the M40 group's family have relocated to the B40 group. The T20 group owned 47.2% of the income share, in contrast, up 0.4 percentage points from 2019. According to information released by the Economic Planning Unit (EPU), food inflation reached 4% in April this year, up from 1.2% in August of last year and 0.9% in January 2020. This is concerning because a significant portion of household spending, 17.3%, goes toward food and non-alcoholic beverage. The income cut off for the B40 in 2019 was 4,849 ringgit Malaysia. This is still well below the SPV's aim of 5,800 ringgit Malaysia. If 4,534 ringgit Malaysia was the average monthly household budget, there would not be much for this bottom group to save. The DOSM also claimed that 12.5% more households in 2020 would have incomes of less than 2,500 ringgit Malaysia, compared to 2019 when there were 6,039,800 in 2020. From 2019 to 2020, the prevalence of absolute poverty climbed from 5.6% to 8.4%. Hardcore poverty was predicted to have increased from 0.4% to 1% over the assessment period, affecting 78,000 households as opposed to 27,200 in 2019.
In conclusion, there are three income groups in Malaysia which are bottom 40, middle 40 and top 20. Bottom 40 greatly consists of Bumiputra, especially those concentrated in rural area, causing socio-economic imbalance. Next, inflation in price because of pandemic has made a lot of people become poorer. At least 20% middle 40 family falls into bottom 40 group, increasing poverty rate. To tackle these issues, government must set policy that where education and healthcare accessible to poor, so the productivity and country's economy can be reformed. Government must have thoughtful fiscal management to reduce debt, so there would be more money for subsidies. Thank you very much for watching.